Hi, I'm Ted Haftagabber, founder and producer of Live Talks Los Angeles. Thanks for joining us. Since we started over a decade ago, we have brought you hundreds of conversations with storytellers, writers, actors, musicians, humorists, chefs, and thought leaders in business and science. You can watch and hear most of these in our YouTube channel and our podcast. For details, visit livetalksla.org. And now, here's the show you've tuned in to see.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks for coming. Judd?
I thought you were going to talk the whole time.
No.
Kevin, how are you? This is so exciting that you have this book, isn't it?
I'm really thrilled about it. I really am. It's the first book I've done that I'm excited about.
The other ones you didn't
The
care
other
about.
20, not so good.
Now, you had the book about pregnancy.
Yeah, it's called Yes, I'm Pregnant, but What About You?
Yep.
No, but what about me?
Yes.
It's, the guy never gets attention during the
Yeah.
pregnancy.
No one cares.
And no one cares. That's why I thought we needed to, point some attention at that.
Yeah.
But that's a long time ago.
I remember when I went to Garry's house after Garry Shandling died, and he had your book out. And your inscription to Garry said, "You don't have to read it, just put it on the coffee table so people can see it."
That's right. Even though it wasn't a coffee table book.
It was not. I exaggerate. This is an art book, right?
It's more of an art memoir book because there's a lot of pictures in there, which will be good for you because I know you like pictures in books. And I'm funny. And also there's some good stories that accompany it.
You've always been drawing, noodling. Now you took it up to another level, right?
I took it up to another level. And also I reached that point where when I turned 60, I thought enough talking about things. Let's start doing these things that I talk. So I'm taking Spanish now twice a week for the last 2 years.
How's that going?
Can't say a thing. But also the sketching helped me because I went through a period of claustrophobia. And I'd be going through the tunnels of New York when I was on a show called Saturday Night Live. So I would have a sketch pad with me all the time, and maybe I would be sitting in an airplane that got stuck on the runway, and I started getting those feelings of claustrophobia. I'd just take out my sketch pad, I started drawing, and I would just completely phase out. And it's the same with doing these paintings. I could go for 4 hours without thinking about eating or anything else, because I'm just so focused on it. But the thing really happened about a year before the pandemic. I follow a lot of these artists on Instagram, and they're really good. They're really, really good. I like the styles of some of them. And then I saw this one guy who I really liked his style, his drawings, and I saw that he was offering lessons, 500 euros for 10 lessons. He lived in London or in England somewhere. And so I signed up for that. And
how much is 500 euros American?
It's about $500. But it really was more than that because of the trips back and forth, So, of course, we did Zoom.
You flew over there and did a Zoom there?
We did Zoom, from London. I would Zoom in from London, and he lived in Wales. Because that's a long drive from London to Wales.
Yeah.
So that was cool. And he taught me how to do caricatures and also digital drawing, too, which was really interesting. That seems to be the thing now, digital drawing.
And so you have stories here with each photo.
Yeah.
You have a story. Some are personal stories.
Yeah, we won't talk about those.
Some are observations. There's great, there's great stuff in there. How long did it take you to put this together? And were you writing new ones and drawing new ones for the book?
You know what is funny, and you can decide if it's funny. I do this hiking show. It's called Hiking with Kevin. It's premiering October 27th. And I was going with Jake Steinfeld one day, Body by Jake.
Yes.
And he's a real networker. And I said, Jake, well, you got any books out? He goes, yeah, I got like 10 books out. But they're all ghost written, ghost. And I thought because it was almost Halloween, that's pretty... And he said, what about you? I said, well, I did one like 15 years ago. It didn't really go anywhere. It's before social media. And he goes, you should do another one. You got any ideas? I said, I do have an idea. He goes, hang on a second. I'm going to call my publisher friend, Jen Miller. I'll call her. He calls her on the trail. He goes, Jen, talk to my friend Kevin. He's got an idea for a book. So I get on the phone. I said, hi, Jen. She goes, you got any ideas? I said, yeah, I do. Call me when you get home. So I called her when I got home, and she loved it. And signed with her. And we went around to different, people that do books. Yeah. I forget what they're called.
Book builders.
Book builders, book doers.
Yeah.
And there was actually a bidding war.
Really?
Yeah. That's the first time
That's fun.
anybody's bidded over something I had. and the people that Abrams, made the right offer.
Yeah.
Can you believe it? $350.
Wow.
Per page.
Yes. Well, there's so many good ones here I want to ask you about. One that I think has a great story in it is Elizabeth Taylor.
Now, she did not look like that when I met her.
Okay.
I went to a lot of Carrie Fisher parties up on Coldwater Canyon, and they were the most eclectic group of people that were there, from Norman Mailer to Paul Allen from Microsoft, Harrison Ford, a lot of people she worked with.
I didn't get invited.
This is before your time.
It was during my time.
It was during your time. It was during my time. Also, you're not in the book.
Because clearly I don't look like someone who could be caricatured.
You really have no outstanding characters that I could think of.
I used to do a joke where I said, you can't do caricatures of like Jewish people because no matter how you do me, it looks like Nazi propaganda. That's why they don't have caricature artists at bar mitzvahs. Too much
Would you
crying.
be disappointed if I was going to draw your caricature and it was more of a portrait?
Like if you just did it was just perfect?
Yeah,
exactly
or would that be a
the way I look,
caricature?
like photorealism
Yeah.
of me? I've given up like with the idea of being attractive in any sense, and it's made life so much easier.
I've always been attracted to you.
Yeah, we have that. But I wish you drew me. Like I thought, like you were going to surprise me tonight and then unleash the Judd.
Well, the evening is young.
Oh my God!
I can actually draw you in the back page if you want.
Now let me tell a story about Kevin. Is when I was at USC. And so this would be in 1986.
Back in the 1900s.
I was a young 18-year-old, and I was booking the comedians at USC, and I booked Kevin. And Kevin used to bring a woman on stage as part of his act, and he would sketch her during the show with the black charcoal. What do you call that? Black charcoal.
Pastel charcoal.
Yeah. And
I get a volunteer out of the audience.
And the whole joke was that the audience could see what he was drawing, she could not, and then he would adjust her face, like, let me see this side of your face, let me see that side of your face, and every time he touched her, there'd be black chalk on her face, and by the end of it, she's just covered in black chalk. And she thinks everyone's laughing as the sketch is bad or something, and it murdered. Do you still do that bit?
No.
30 years later.
No.
Was that filler because you didn't have enough material? What was that?
It was my end. No, that was really the only material I had. The beginning was filler. but it was really a lot of work to carry that easel and that paper, and the chalk was always messy.
Yeah.
And I was threatened a few times.
People got mad at you after.
Oh yeah, I was working at Caesars in Tahoe once, and I did it. And
to John Gotti's wife.
John Gotti's wife, yeah. And I'm standing in the lobby afterwards. And this guy comes up to me with the paper all rolled up. It was like this big, and he rolled it up. And he comes up to me, he goes, I just want you to know that you ruined my wife's entire day, and it's her birthday. I said, I'm sorry, where is she? She's in the bathroom trying to get that stuff off her face. I said, I'm so sorry. And then she came out, and I started talking to them after a while. And by the time they left, she said, hey, take care, man. All right, it was great talking to you. That's the way I am with people. But seriously.
You owned them for after a little while.
People always have that soft side. You just got to find it, Judd.
Yeah. So tell us about Elizabeth Taylor.
Well, she's dead, first of all.
Yeah.
Elizabeth Taylor. Oh, so I went to Carrie Fisher party. I'm sitting on the couch having more popcorn than I should be having. And I get up, and as I'm getting up, I turn to make sure I didn't spill any popcorn on the couch. And I see Elizabeth Taylor sitting in the chair next to me. And she stands up. I said, "Hi, Elizabeth. How are you?" As if I knew her.
Yeah.
And she never asks anybody over 70 how they're doing, because it's going to be a long medical, you know. And she goes, "Oh, my back is killing me now." I said, "Oh, I'm so sorry. What's going on?" She goes, "I got some discs. I said, well, you should put some ice on there, because I pretty much lived on ice for the last 10 years. You know, it's all over, you know, strains and sprains. And she goes, "Oh, honey, I frozen peas is my thing. I use frozen peas." "That's great. You one at a time or the whole bag?" Or she goes, "Yeah, the whole bag, and it just conforms to your back, right?" So since then, from that moment, I started using frozen peas, and I used the same bag for about 10 years. And I called it my Elizabeth, like Tom Hanks Wilson. And I would use that bag so much, and it would be sitting on my shoulder on top of Ben Gay. And so the bag had like a minty smell to it, and the label kind of wore off after a while. And I had that bag probably maybe 6 years. And my mother-in-law came over one day, and she wanted to make dinner for us. And I come out, I sit down, there's a bowl of peas. And I go to eat it, and they smell really minty. And I go, "Where did you get these peas?" She goes, "Oh, they were in the refrigerator." I said, "No, that was my Elizabeth."
They weren't even in the freezer.
Huh?
You left them in the fridge for 6 years, not the freezer.
In the freezer, I had them. Not in the refrigerator. I had them in the oven, mostly. But yeah, so that's the Elizabeth Taylor story. Yes. Oh, and then we dated, too. I dated Elizabeth for about 5 years after that.
And so you spent many years at Saturday Night Live. You crossed a few eras at SNL, right? You were there with different
1800s,
casts?
1900s.
So when you started there, it was the Dana Carvey, Jan Hooks.
Well, when I came in, there was only 8 of us.
Yeah. Now there's how many?
Now there's 33 of them.
Yeah,
I think there's something like that, though. There's
Yeah.
maybe 25.
Yeah.
And the whole intros take about a half hour.
Yeah.
So it's really an hour
It killed
show.
Don Pardo.
Oh, yeah. It did,
That's how he died. 27 people into the
He
intro.
did. Yeah, and it was like, "Molly Shell!"
So there were 8 people in the cast.
8 people in the cast. And then it became more. People started coming in, like Adam Sandler, Mike Myers, Chris Farley, Spade.
Yeah.
And I was angry that Spade came there because he was subletting my room back here in California. And I thought, that's great. I got somebody renting my room from me. And then he got on there like a year later. So he kind of screwed me out of my rent.
But your comedy career started at the Comedy Store? Was that
No, it started at the Improvisation.
You were a bartender at the Improvisation.
I eventually became a bartender after maybe a year of doing stand-up, open mic nights everywhere. And I always knew about the Improv because I knew that's where a lot of people worked that I would watch on TV back in Connecticut. People like Andy Kaufman, Jay Leno, a lot of those types of people, Robin Williams. And so when I drove out to Los Angeles, and that was the first place I went. I pulled up there, it was in the afternoon, and I knocked on the door, and Bud Freeman answered it. It was closed, but he opened the door, he let us in, me and my buddy. And he gave us a tour of the Improv.
Wow.
And I was so excited. He was showing me clippings on the wall of Letterman and Jay Leno. This is 1979. And he brings me into the showroom, and I almost had a heart attack. And we left eventually, and he goes, come back again and see us sometime. And I did come back over and over and over for a long time. And I would just hang out there, and I would be the bartender for 2 years. And I didn't know how to mix drinks.
Yeah.
I had the Boston Bartender Guide underneath the thing. I mean, I knew nothing. I didn't know what a 7 and 7 was. And I was afraid to take tips off the bar because I didn't know if they left it there or they're going to take it with them. And I took $1 once. The guy goes, whoa, 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 what's going on, man? That's my dollar. And I go, oh, sorry, sorry. So I got to the point where there was a big window by the bar. I wouldn't take a tip, or what I thought was a tip, until I saw that person drive away.
Were you doing any stand-up when you were bartending?
Yeah, I was doing, if someone didn't
Open
show
mic
up,
nights?
if somebody didn't show up, I would go on stage.
Yeah.
But it took me a long time to kind of get to the point where I would perform there. It was the first stage I ever went on. I was living on a couch in Downey, California. I used to be a lifeguard in Connecticut, and this other guy was a lifeguard, and he became a substitute teacher in Downey. So he let me sleep on his couch, and I would make that 45-minute drive into Hollywood every Sunday. But I didn't go right in there at first. I was so scared. I would park across the street. I would stalk the club, and I would watch from my car, and I'd see people going in, and then I go back to Downey and sleep on the couch.
You just get too scared to even walk in.
Oh, yeah. Because I thought they would know I wanted to go on stage. And then the next time I would drive and I'd walk into the bar area, but I wouldn't go into the showroom. And then the next time I go into the showroom. And then the next time I put my name in the hat. And then one night they pull my name out. I get the peak, the best time to go on. And they said, Kevin Nealon. And everybody's looking around for me. And I start looking around for me too, because I don't want to go on. I don't want to go on. And so it took me a while. Finally, I went on one night when there was maybe 4 people in the room. And one of them was the guy that drove me in there. And I went on, and I was hooked after that.
Yeah.
I was hooked, yeah.
People forget that, like, when you start doing stand-up and you do open mic nights, an enormous amount of time, there's no one there.
Nobody.
Like, when you're learning to do stand-up, you need a crowd, and so rarely there is a crowd.
Do you remember the Deli Smoker?
Yeah, yeah.
It was Delicatessen in the Valley. And you would go there, and there's sawdust on the floor. There's booths. None of them are facing the little stage that we set up. You got to get the microphone out and set it up. And one time I went out there, I was the MC. I set it up, and I'm doing my act, and there's one table, a booth. They're not even facing me. And like 10 minutes into my act, they get up to leave. So now there's nobody there. Just me and the sawdust.
And so at what point did you ever shift to the Comedy Store? Because weren't you a Comedy Store
I used to
person?
go to a Comedy Store and open mic night. And I remember everybody would be crowded around outside. And there was these 2 MCs. Danny Mora, I remember. Danny Mora was the lead guy, and he's very bossy. He'd get up on a chair in the middle of all the open night micers, and he'd go, remember, when you see the light, you say goodnight. They shine a light in the back when you're done. It was like 5 minutes. And there were some crazy people that went on there. I mean, some people that I think were really deranged.
Yeah.
Yeah. There was one guy I remember. I forget his name, but he was from Alabama. And you could barely understand what he was saying. He said, he always ended with, yeah, don't you know? So he did this one joke. I still remember it. He goes, you use a gun, you go to prison. What happens if you use an axe? You go to the forest? Yeah, don't you know? So I did that a lot, and I was doing well there. Yeah. And then I auditioned for Mitzi once, the owner at the time, and she did not let me pass the audition and told me I should go work at other clubs. Because basically, I was the bartender at the Improv, and she thought I was one of those improv guys.
Because there was a war back then. You couldn't play both places.
Yeah, yeah. But she told me the excuse she said was she already had a tall comic. I said, okay, that makes sense. I was very gullible.
But also, at that moment at the Comedy Store, it was, Richard Pryor was coming in all the time, and Andy Kaufman was still coming in.
Yeah.
To the Improv.
I loved Andy Kaufman. Yeah. I did one of him in the book, and I really admired him because he was so unique, so original.
What was he like when you talked to him?
Well,
off stage?
I was scared to talk to him, but I remember he was standing outside the Improv, and I knew he was into TM, meditation. So I thought that would be my icebreaker. Mm-hmm. And I went up to him, and I said, hey, Andy, can you do me a favor? Tell me about TM. And he went on for like a half hour, just talking about it and looking out, never really looked at me much, looked out at the street, the cars passing on Melrose, and I was just looking at his face. I don't think I heard one word he said. I was just studying his face, and he had moles, and I was connecting the moles in my head, but he was like my favorite. I would watch when I was bartending. He would be on stage, and that room was always packed. It had that New York energy. Robin Williams would come on. Jay Leno always killed it. Richard Lewis. And couldn't get in there. And Bud was really good. Out of the aisle, no room back here, go back out. And I would go up to the office, and there's a little hole. And I would watch through that hole. And it was really amazing time.
I would assume it's also a terrifying time to think, I want to do what they're doing.
Oh, well, I saw Robin Williams at a place called The Last Laugh in Newport. It's not there anymore. Neither is Robin Williams. But I saw him, maybe I've been out to California for 6 months, and I go down there and they introduce Robin Williams. And he doesn't walk out on stage and take the mic. He comes from the back of the room with his Shakespeare hat on and his loose pants, and he's just doing characters, and he's going up to women and taking their purses and pulling stuff out. Oh, look, and there, you have the bits on it. And he had a lot of different characters. And I saw him, and I thought, what am I doing? What am I even doing here? And I mean, I'll never be like that. I was thinking about going home, but then I thought, well, he can't be everywhere at once.
Yeah.
Almost, but not completely. And then we kind of became club friends. We never hung out, but I would see him at the clubs, and he would call me boss. He called everybody boss. Hey, boss, how you doing, boss? And I would call him Bobo. And I always thought he was doing a Scottish impression, the way he talked, but he wasn't. That's the way he talked. And I always admired him, and he was always funny. And then I was in San Francisco once at a place called Cobb's in the Marina, and he came back into the club. He had performed, but came back. He was really pissed. I said, what's the matter? He goes, hey, my car won't start. Me car won't start. So I said, why don't I take a look at it? And I know nothing about cars. Nothing. I could show him where the handle is to get in. But I pretended I did, just to kind of hang out with him. So we walked like 400 yards to his car. It's a Range Rover, a Land Rover. And it was one of those classic Land Rovers. And he opens up the hood, and he's pulling wires, and he's cursing up and down. And I'm thinking, wow, he is human. He's human, this guy. Yeah. He gets angry. And I was just sticking my head in there. I'm just, going, that doesn't look like that. Doesn't look like. I said, you got AAA card? You got AAA? I got one if you want to use it.
And Richard Pryor, did you see him in those days?
Richard Pryor and I were roommates for several years. I would see him once in a while.
Yeah.
I would see him once in a while. There was a lot of comics that were there that you didn't even know that did comedy, like Michael Keaton. Stand-up. Michael Keaton had one of my favorite jokes. He said, you ever see this guy out in front of Canners? He's out there all the time. And he's like, hey, every night, hey. And I went up to him one night, and I said, hey, what? He goes, hey, can you tell me how to get to La Cienega? And he left. He was there. He never came back again. But Craig T. Nelson.
Yeah, he was in a comedy team with Barry Levinson.
Barry Levinson. Obama was a comic there.
Yeah. People forget about that.
Well, a lot of people...
Sam Kinison.
Yeah, true. A lot of people don't... Well, maybe they do know it, but Zelensky from Ukraine was a comedian before he got nominated to be the president.
Yeah. And he played the president in a TV show, didn't he?
He played in The West Wing.
Yep.
Yeah.
And so you're doing stand-up, and then you get Saturday Night Live. So what was your audition like? Because you weren't really doing characters.
I didn't do... I was a stand-up. I was just a stand-up. But Dana Carvey's a friend of mine who's in the book. All my friends are in the book.
See, I got a big nose. There's a lot of features to work with.
If some people don't have features, I just give them big ears and a long neck.
You stretch them out a little bit.
Yeah.
But what do you think they saw in you? Because the same thing happened with Sandler. There was an era where they were hiring stand-ups who didn't do characters. They weren't Second City people or groundlings. I lived with, Adam Sandler when he auditioned, and he just did stand-up in Chicago.
Yeah.
And I thought, he doesn't do any characters. What is he going to do on this show? And then suddenly he started doing all these characters, but he had never done any before.
Yeah.
Was that the same with you?
Well, no. For me, I was friends with Dana Carvey, still am. And we shared a house in the Hollywood Hills. And he got selected to be on SNL because he does characters and impressions and accents and all that, and rightfully so. So he goes off to New York, and I'm so excited for him. I can't believe it. I know somebody on SNL now. And 2 weeks later, I get a call from him. He goes, Kevin, I'm at Lorne Michaels' house. I'm in the back bedroom. Guess who's in the kitchen? He goes, Bill Murray. I'm like, what? He goes, yeah, anyway, Lorne is looking for one more cast member. I told him about you, and I think he's going to want to see your audition tape. I said, Bill Murray's in the kitchen? You know what I mean? I wasn't even acknowledging that because I knew I'd never get on that show because I don't do characters or impressions or accents. I'm just a stand-up.
And did you act at all?
A really, really good stand-up, by the way.
The best.
That's true.
The best.
You'll see. I'll show you.
But did you ever act? Did you do
Did I ever
theater
act?
in college? Or?
No.
So
No.
when they said, all right, you're going to be in a sketch, were you just terrified?
I go there and I audition. Somehow I got it. He was looking for people that had chemistry on the show because the year before there was no chemistry, there was no synergy with the writers. So I was friends with Dana. I was dating Jan Hooks at the time. And the rest of the people I didn't really know. Dennis Miller I knew a little bit. And so I auditioned, then he gives me the job, and I go there, and I took this thing I used to do in my stand-up called Mr. Subliminal, where you just you throw things out there. And I remember that was the first sketch I ever did, and it was difficult. It was the first show, and I've never done that show before. I'm standing on the stage waiting for the commercial to end to go out, and I'm thinking, this is where John Belushi and all those guys worked, and 5 seconds to go, and Lauren comes up, he puts his hand on my shoulder, he goes, "Are you sure this is what you want?" Action.
But that sketch went really well.
The sketch went well, and I thought, this is easy, the show. But it was, I was there for 9 years, and I loved it. A lot of people get on there, and they get impatient. They want to be a star overnight. I was just happy to be there. I love working with all those people, Steve Martin, Bill Murray. I mean, everybody came through there. Dolly Parton, people loved Dolly Parton. The crew fell in love with her.
Yeah.
I wasn't such a fan, but everybody else.
Who were you excited to interact with?
Well, Steve Martin, because I was always, I saw him in concert at Universal Amphitheater with the Blues Brothers opening for him when he was doing the Wild and Crazy guy with the white suit. He hosted a show with my other guy, James Taylor. I used to love James Taylor. He's in the book. I still love him. And I used to listen to him growing up because I played the guitar. And I have the record player. I try to put the needle down at the exact spot. I'm old. and so I would see him in concert tons of time. And then he comes on the show. I'm really nervous and excited. And we're standing by the craft service table where they have the food. And he comes over. That was not COVID. He comes over, and I see him, and I go, "James, you got to try the donuts. They're really good." He goes, "Yeah, I had one a little while ago. I like them." You know? And we talked for like 10 minutes, and I'm asking him, now when you play that chord on Carolina in my mind, do you use your pinky too? "Yeah, I do." "Oh, sorry to hear that," because I couldn't get my pinky over there. And we talked for a while. He goes, "We should hang out for a while." I say that to a lot of people, but I think I would really like that. So we exchanged numbers, and I think 2 days later, I went to his apartment to pick him up. I take the elevator up, and it empties into his apartment. Nice place. And he's holding a little dog, and he's ready to go. He puts the dog down, and we go, and we walk to a Cuban restaurant on Broadway, because that's where he wanted to go. And I hate Cuban food, and it makes me sweat. But I said, "Yeah, let's go there, man. I love Cuban food." But I felt like I was on a date.
Yeah.
I was really nervous, and we sit down and we eat. I don't even remember what we talked about. I was just looking at the moles on his face. And we finished dinner, and we're walking back down Broadway, and we go back to his apartment. And I'm thinking, do I kiss him? Do I hug him? What do I do?
It was the best night of your life.
It was a really fun night, and we became buddies after that. I hosted one of his shows he did. It was called, Live by Request it was called. And I went out to the Vineyard once. He invited me out there to record their rehearsals for the next concert. And he stayed in a cabin next to ours because his house was being renovated. And I remember he came over, he put his set list down on the table, all the index cards of the different songs. And I'm thinking, I can't believe I'm here with James Taylor. And he goes, "Well, which one do you think I should, do you like the order?" I said, "Yeah, but I think this one here at the end, it's called Walk Down the Lonesome Road." It's a really kind of down song, heartfelt. I said, "Maybe you don't want to end with that." He goes, "Nah, I'm ending with that one." I said, "Okay, then I'm not doing that again." And then he came over to use our washing machine. I was so honored. And he had a big pile of laundry, threw it in there, and he puts it in the dryer. And he's folding it all. He's folding it. I'm thinking, James Taylor's folding his laundry at my house. And then he's missing a sock. And he goes, I can't, I'm missing a sock. And I'm thinking, oh, he's going to think I stole it. You know? But I said, did you check the washing machine? Because sometimes they get stuck underneath, and he checked it, and it was there. So
You're a hero.
From then we became friends, yeah.
That made up for you being a dick about his pet list, right?
Yeah. And to this day, he calls me, have you seen my wallet? Have you seen my wallet? Have you checked the top of the washing machine?
And you had, I mean, the bands there, I remember when Adam was on the show, I would try to visit when, like, you know, Bruce Springsteen was there or something like that. And Nirvana, you have a Kurt Cobain
Kurt Cobain was walking down the hallway. And a lot of people would ask me to give auction items. So I thought, well, I'll just have people sign something when they host. Paul McCartney was there. I had one of the pages run down again, a couple of albums. And I brought those up, and he signed those for me. I kept those.
Yeah.
And then Kurt Cobain was there, and I wasn't much a fan of Nirvana, so I didn't really worry about approaching him. Yeah. So I said, Kurt, would you mind? Page went down and got me an unauthorized biography on Kurt Cobain. And I gave it to him. I said, Kurt, would you mind signing this? And he goes, yeah, sure. And he signs it. I didn't look at it. About a week later, I opened up, it said, in like third grader handwriting, I am not Liberace, Kurt Cobain. Right?
And you kept that too?
I kept that too. In fact, I kept everything.
Yeah. And then you gave money to charity yourself?
No. And then Carrie Fisher, she was bipolar. She was in and out of those institutions. So I got a...
Why are you laughing?
Huh? What?
It seemed like a weird place to laugh.
So I got a Psychology Today magazine.
Yeah.
She was on the cover. Talking about bipolar. And I said, Carrie, would you mind signing this for a charity? She said, sure, and she wrote on it. And a week later, I looked at it, and it said, Kevin, you're an asshole, Carrie Fisher.
So you kept that one too?
I kept that one too. And we got boxing gloves from Rocky, and we're not giving anything. We're gonna have to start a charity.
Yeah. Do you even have a charity?
Yeah. Well, they say charity starts at home. Yeah. So it's a nice charity. It's very, not a lot of people there, but we do well. Yeah. We do well.
And you also have a picture of the great Chris Farley in the book.
Chris Farley.
And so Chris Farley, I think to comedians and comedy people, they see him as one of the true greats of all time. Just a Tasmanian devil of comedy.
Yeah.
And to hang out, anything could happen.
It was always, I don't want to say uncomfortable being around him, but he was always on. He always needed...
Which is uncomfortable.
It is.
Because he liked to make a scene.
He liked to make a scene. He was broad and laughed a lot. And I always tell him, hey, Chris, you got to take it down a notch. So whenever he would see me, he goes, whoa, take it down a notch, take it down a notch. But I remember the day he came off the elevator, he was so excited to be there. He's pulling his pants up like the motivational speaker guy. And Mr. Nealon, how you doing, And he was just so wide-eyed, and he just didn't realize he was enough. He just felt like he had to be more and more to prove himself. But we saw what he wanted to be, just like Belushi.
Yeah.
He loved John Belushi, and every way he wanted to be like him. The drugs, and I said one day to him, I said, Chris, you really got to start taking care of yourself, man. You're so funny. I said, you just got to stop all this stuff or slow down or something. He goes, well, John Belushi did a lot of drugs, That's the worst impression I've ever done. But I said, but yeah, John Belushi would have been a lot funnier if he wasn't doing the drugs, and he would have been alive now. He goes, really? And I said, yeah. And then he did that Chippendale dancer sketch. And I've never cracked on that show. I never broke until after, because Lauren always said it was very like Carol Burnett show. It was very hacky.
Yeah.
So we're all afraid to laugh. But I came close to it with that Chippendale dancer sketch. Chris Farley plays a Chippendale. He's auditioning to be a Chippendale dancer. And they have no shirt on. They have cuffs and the bow tie. Well, you were a Chippendale dancer for a while, weren't you? Leather pants. And he was out there auditioning. I was one of the judges. It was like American Idol. It was me, Jan Hooks, and Mike Myers. And we had clipboards. And he was dancing next to Patrick Swayze, who was auditioning, and he's like six-packs everywhere. And every time I looked up to Farley, his stomach was sloshing back and forth. And I had to keep looking down at the clipboard. And I looked up again, and there's stretch marks everywhere. But I almost lost it, but I didn't. And then I find out later that he was a little apprehensive about agreeing to do that because he was subconscious about being a plus size.
Yeah. And Sandler used to say that he would try to make people laugh during the sketch. Like, he knew when he wasn't on camera. And so when the light was on the other person in the scene, he would fuck with them and try to make them laugh by not doing something for the scene. Just like giving them crazy eyes or something. Did you experience that with him?
I don't think I was in many sketches with him because I'm a pro.
You wouldn't allow him in your sketches?
No, I don't go for the laughing stuff.
Yeah.
From the audience or from the players.
Yeah. One of my favorite things that you did was the porn movie reviews.
Porn reviewer, yeah.
Can you explain to them what that was? It was a Weekend Update piece. This is one of my favorites.
Explain to them. Well, porn is a thing where people have sex. This was called the Porn Review, which was written by Al Franken, Senator Al Franken.
Maybe don't tell this story. Maybe let them search it.
All right.
I mean, you didn't have to add that part.
It was basically, it was a Weekend Update feature I was doing. Dennis Miller was the anchor. And I was a reviewer for, Hustler magazine. They sent me 3 adult videos, and they wanted me to review them. And, that felt awkward, agreeing to do that. But I love to write. So I said, okay, send them to me. So I reviewed them, and the first one was called Wanda Whips Wall Street. And this was starring Denise Johnson. Watched it, was interested, more interested, very interested, and then suddenly no interest at all. The second video was called Dolls of Wall Street or something. Good story, good production value, interested right away. Interested, more interested, very interested, then suddenly no interest at all. I left the DVD running. I went into the kitchen. I made myself a sandwich. I had a Diet Coke, some potato chips. I was out there for maybe 45 minutes. Came back in the living room. The DVD was still running. Found myself interested again. Interested, more interested, very interested, then suddenly no interest at all. Okay, the last video, I'm afraid to say, was called Heavy Into Jeff. This is an all-male film. And I got to be honest with you, I was not looking forward to watching this one. I was very skeptical. Skeptical, more skeptical, very skeptical, someone interested. Interested, more interested, very interested, and suddenly no interest at all. And ashamed, depressed, suicidal, despondent, dejected, rejected, sad, alone, confused. Someone interested. Interested, very interested, and then no interest at all. That was Al Franken again.
Yes.
Al Franken. I was the messenger.
You were the messenger. And the one that I always think about is you did a sketch about a very important topic: waiters who don't write down your order and just try to memorize it.
Yeah. That was called Waiters Without Pads.
Yes.
And they always annoyed me. That and bathroom attendants.
Yes.
And I did a bathroom attendant sketch where it was a tiny bathroom, just one toilet, not even in a stall, and a sink, and I was in a tuxedo, and I was the bathroom attendant in there. And Harvey Keitel comes in, he was hosting that week, and he sees me and goes, "Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't know somebody was in there." And I go, No, sorry, I work here. And he goes, oh, okay. I said, will we be going number 1 or dropping anchor? And he's really uncomfortable with it all. And I said, I'll help him pull down his pants. He goes, no, that's all right. And he sits down and, he's doing his thing, and he's really uncomfortable that I'm standing there. And I'm just like, And I say, we have Cologne, we have Hermes, we have Brut, we have, High Karate. And he goes, no, I'm good. And it's a quiet moment for a while. We have the New York Post, we have the New York Times, we have the Enquirer. He goes, I'll take that, and he holds it over his head. And he starts laughing. And I'm thinking, this guy's an amateur. And when he's done, of course, he gets up, and I'm folding toilet paper for him. And he gets up, and I'm dusting his coat off, and I'm going to help him pull up his pants. He goes, no, that's all right. And at the end, as he's going out, Chris Farley comes in. And he's my regular customer. Chris Farley, hey, Bob, how's it going? I said, okay, come on in. Come on in. But the waiter without pad thing is, that's also another thing that kind of annoys me when people don't write it down. And you're giving all kinds of order. I'll have the arugula salad with just a little bit of blue cheese on it, and no walnuts. And then I'll have a martini, but just like 3 ice cubes, and no, go easy on the lime. And, again, I don't know what's in the. I was the worst bartender. I should have wrote it down. And so, of course, that's Phil, and I think Rosie O'Donnell. And so I go to the kitchen, and halfway there I come back and say, okay, so now you had, again, the meatloaf and Arnold Palmer. He goes, no, and he says it again. He goes, maybe you should write this down. So I kept going like that, back and forth, back and forth. And then I finally went into the kitchen, and his phone rings. He picks up, hello? Okay, now that was scrambled eggs? Was that scrambled eggs?
Who was the weirdest star you had to act with, where you thought, this is crazy?
Steven Seagal.
Yeah. Well, is that considered one of the worst shows in the history of the show?
I don't like to point out who's the worst, but everybody said he was the worst one.
Yeah.
I mean, they went on about how horrible he was, and I mean, I didn't really interact with him that much, but I would see him standing around sometimes like this, like he was a bodyguard for nobody behind him. But yeah, people did not like him for his unprofessionalism, and he did not want to play ball. And there was one scene where he's supposed to throw stuntmen in a Western scene in a saloon, throw them into the wall, and they had a breakaway wall. And he did that in the dress rehearsal. In the live show, he threw them into the studs so they didn't break. And I know these stuntmen were hurt, and they'd hobble off. But, they're stuntmen, so they don't like to admit they're hurt. Much like comedians.
Well, he's probably a terrible actor and stunt person.
People say he was a terrible actor. I didn't see that, but people say that he was not professional.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I mean, you would think at that part of his career, he knew where to throw people.
You would think, with the amount, being a CIA and, being...
He knows karate.
He knows karate. He knows jiu-jitsu. Mm-hmm. He knows Tai Chi. Yeah. You could hurt somebody with Tai Chi.
Yeah.
But yeah, you would
very
think
slowly. But you had controversial hosts then. I remember that Andrew Dice Clay was a controversial week
he's not in the book.
At the show. And also, you were there when Sinead O'Connor tore up the picture of the Pope, and there's a big documentary about her now where people are saying, in retrospect, a brave thing to do to stand up for kids who were maybe being mistreated by the church. Where were you in that fight?
Well, I'm friends with the Pope.
Yeah. So it was uncomfortable for you.
It was really uncomfortable to choose sides, but I eventually went with the bald woman.
Yeah.
I remember sitting in the makeup room when she did that.
Yeah.
Because in dress rehearsal, she tore up a boyfriend's picture or something. And then in the live show, she did that.
Were people freaked out in the moment?
I wasn't freaked out because I thought maybe it was planned.
Yeah.
That makeup room was funny. I remember one time being in there with Tony Randall. And I had a long time in between sketches, and I had this wig with a lace in the front of it. And I remember looking in the mirror, kind of doing that for a while. And Tony Randall obviously was watching me for 5 minutes doing that. Finally, he goes, "Young man, you have perfection. Stop futzing with it."
There's a lot of people hang around the show.
Yeah.
Right? Like rock stars and actors. People who aren't on the show are just, there's a big party after every show.
There's a party. The hardest thing for me on that show was getting guests in. Because everybody wanted to come, and you only get a certain amount of tickets. And instead of worrying about your lines and learning your lines, you're going, did Frank get in? He's in, okay, he's in, okay, good. Or wait, Tony, you didn't get in? All right, hang on a second, I'll send a page down. So that was and then this is when I knew I had to leave. I had been there for 9 years, and I always had friends coming, and there was a party in my dressing room. And they weren't even watching the show. They had something else on. And the blender, making margaritas.
Yeah.
And sometimes I'd be out doing a sketch, and I could almost hear the blender going in the room. And then I would go to the craft service table, and I'd eat a couple of donuts before my sketch. And I was out there. I was so comfortable doing sketches. I remember picking food out of my mouth when I was doing a sketch with somebody in the craft service table. So I thought maybe it's time to move on.
Yeah. Well, there seems to be that moment when people have been on the show, year 7, 8, and 9, where they get so comfortable that they get really crazy funny. I thought Tim Meadows was like that. Kenan Thompson's like that. Bill Hader's last year or two, he was like really, really loose.
Mine never happened.
Yeah.
It didn't happen.
And you did Update for a long time.
Weekend Update, yeah.
And that was like when Sandler broke through on Update. And what was Adam like as a presence like in the offices?
Sandler, Farley, Spade, and Chris Rock had their offices on the other side because there was no room left when they came. So that was like a frat house. They were all, I go in there and there's just pizza boxes everywhere. It's like kids. And there are Playboy magazines on the floor. Interested. And so we didn't interact that much, but Sandler was always fun and always a good writer too. He wrote that Obisimo sketch, the Italian.
Oh, where everyone kisses.
Where the Italians kiss each other, the customers, but then it just progressed.
And the pepper sketch.
The pepper sketch.
Do you want more pepper?
Yeah, you like the juice.
More pepper.
More pepper. A lot of his stuff was changing his voice.
Well, I remember he used to say, I don't think I can get on the show, but if I write a really good sketch, I can give myself one key joke.
Yeah.
Like a really good joke. And so he was really into letting everyone else score as long as he could kind of sneak in and get a shot in.
Yeah. And he was good at that too. And I think the Weekend Update features is what really he scored with. But I remember I worked with him at Syracuse. I think it was out of college. And we booked this maybe 10 months before we were going to do it, and he was opening for me. And within that 10 months, he became a big star in SNL. People loved him. So we go up to Syracuse, and he's opening for me, and he's killing it. People wearing redheaded sweatshirts, they got everything. And I'm in the back room going, oh no. And I bombed out there after him. I think people left before I even got on. I said, that's the last time I'm working with him. But I'm going to be with him November 14th in Savannah.
Oh, you're going to do some of that. I'm going to open up a couple of shows.
But I'm not going to let him open for me.
Yeah.
I'm going to switch it around. I'm going to open for him.
Do a tight fight. And you've been in a bunch of movies with Adam.
I've been in about 13 Adam Sandler films, all embarrassing roles.
Yeah.
In Little Nicky, I played Tithead, the gatekeeper of hell. And I had two breasts on my head. And the makeup department did such a great job. You would think they were real breasts. Mm-hmm. I mean, they felt like real breasts, I would imagine. And they and everybody wanted to feel my breasts on my head. Mm-hmm. And all day long, they were feeling them. And it's like there was a line.
Yeah.
And
Rodney Dangerfield?
Rodney Dangerfield wanted to have sex with my head in the movie. And I remember I'd be talking to some people, and a lot of times I'd have to say, excuse me, my eyes are down here. My eyes are down here. And when they took them off at the end of the day, nobody cared about me. It's like I was invisible.
That was like your Tootsie.
That's right.
And so Rodney Dangerfield was in that movie? You got to spend some time with him?
Yeah, Rodney Dangerfield.
How was that?
It was interesting. I mean, we all know Rodney. And he was sitting on a little crate when I first came in. And I said, Rodney, you want to go inside and sit down? He goes, you got to sit somewhere. And he just stayed there, And I said, how you doing, Rodney? He goes, I'm coughing up blood now. And I said, really? He goes, yeah. He thought there was mold in his apartment in the Wilshire corridor.
Yeah.
So
that wasn't really a joke, Kevin.
Let me finish.
But what the blood really was.
So what the blood really was fake blood.
Yeah. But Rodney was a big guy for, I think, a lot of us because he became a giant star in the early 80s.
Yeah.
And was the funniest of everyone. I know Sandler, a lot of his career and his inspiration was Rodney, and Rodney brought Jim Carrey on the road to open for him when he was like 19 years old. And we all went to Vegas once with Adam, and it was Adam, me, Rob Schneider, Quentin Tarantino, and Carl Weathers.
Did a road trip?
All did a road trip to go see Rodney and pay our respects. And he was 83 years old and murdered. He was so funny.
Yeah, I got to go see him.
Now you have a few pages to our good friend Garry Shandling.
Yeah.
In here, and
Garry had one of my favorite jokes to this day. He goes, sometimes when I'm lonely, I'll shave one leg, so I feel like I'm with a woman. I liked it.
I was when I was like going through his stuff. No one asked me to, but I did. And he had on a corkboard. It was just a piece of paper, and I'm sure it's a joke he never said, but he said, "People ask me where I was on 9/11, and I always say, which 9/11? I've had so many bad 9/11s."
Why did he do that?
That was a joke you're not allowed to say.
Yeah.
It just lives on a corkboard somewhere. But when I was going through like some of his joke books for the documentary, he would be like trying to figure out a joke. So he'd say, "I am dating a woman who is a nurse, and we have sex in a hospital bed." And then he would list every possible joke, like, we keep up the arms so we don't fall out with this, with that, and he would have like 25 jokes there. But one of them was that he said, I put a mirror above my bed, and then he did every mirror joke, and it was, I put a mirror above my bed and one on the floor, so when I have sex, it looks like I'm having sex with 1,000 people. And then the joke he landed on, I don't think he ever did that joke, was, there's a mirror above my bed, and on it, it says, "Objects in mirror are larger than they appear."
That's right. Yeah, he was a great comic. He was my mentor, and I would watch him on the Tonight Show, and I'd love his Armani suits that he used to wear. And I'd say, "Gary,
big shoulders.
You look really, the padding in the shoulders, and the helmet he wore was great." But he taught me a lot about comedy, just by watching him.
Yeah.
And we had, those Sunday basketball games where everybody would come.
Yeah.
And it was like a talk show. I'd ask him, I said, "Gary, who's on the court this week?" And he'd go, "Brad Pitt's coming." Really? Yeah. David Duchovny, Greg Kinnear. And we would hang out there, and people would just go to him because he had so much great advice for everybody. Adam McKay would be asking him advice. Everybody. Jim Carrey was there a few times. It was really fun. And he'd get food out, and he'd put it on the counter. He'd get food delivered, pizza, salads. You've been up there before.
Yeah, he hated his house. He designed his house himself, built it.
Beautiful views.
And then just had
He just
issue.
constantly had architects coming over and plans on the wall. And I said this before, like this beautiful setting for him was his albatross. He just was not happy with it.
So he would take everyone out to look at real estate.
He loved open houses. He really did. I would always ask him to go hiking, and he would invite me to go hiking. Yeah. And finally I went with him, and I realized his hiking was going from open house to open house in the Hollywood Hills.
When you look back now, what were you guys talking about most of the time?
Girls.
Yeah.
The last time I was with him, a few days before he died, we were in Malibu at that Malibu restaurant that's kind of outside. I said to him, "Gary, are you seeing anybody?" Because I hadn't seen him with a girl for a while. And he goes, "Well, I'm seeing one therapist." And, I said, no, not a therapist. I mean, socially, you see. He goes, "No, I'm just, my health is just not good yet. I got to focus on that."
And so what did you choose to do when you drew him? What were you going for? Let me find that. Because there's 4.
Well, I didn't even need a reference picture. A lot of these I do with reference pictures from Getty Images or whatever I think is a good picture, or if the person interests me. And with Garry, I knew him so well because I looked at his face so many times. I knew his eyes, the way they watered. I knew his big lips. I knew every crack in his lip. And I knew his nose and all the little tiny capillaries that were broken in his nose, which I put in there, but I made him a little bigger. I exaggerated the capillaries.
That's pretty good.
Yeah. And that's a common look that he had.
And we did a memorial for Garry, and you had one of the great memorial speeches that almost felt like Garry assisted in some way, because it really was.
Felt like he was there. He was complaining about his mother all the time, how she screwed him up, how she wanted to marry him or something, and went on and on about how horrible she was. And I would say at the memorial, and what really infuriates me now is Garry is with his mother for the rest of eternity.
And so tell us a little bit about some other people in the book. You have a picture of Buzz Aldrin in the book.
Yeah, Buzz Aldrin, second man on the moon. I'm in Mexico, and I'm walking on the beach in Puerto Vallarta, and I see Buzz Aldrin. with his wife. I would call him Buzzy all the time. Buzzy, Buzzy. And I went over and I talked to him. I said, I'm really honored to meet you. I'm so much respect for you walking on the moon and stuff. I said, were you ever worried that you wouldn't get off the moon? And he looked at me and goes, what are you, a wise guy? What? What do you mean? I said, no, I'm just curious if you ever were worried about that. He goes, why wouldn't we get off the moon? I said, I don't know. Maybe the lunar module wouldn't start or something. Sometimes my car doesn't start. I would expect it to start, but sometimes it doesn't. And I got to get somewhere. And he said, well, we did get into the lunar module, and there was a little fuse that was sticking out, so we just called Houston. They said, put it back in. Mm-hmm. See, he's a rocket scientist. So he really is a rocket scientist. Mm-hmm. So he expects everything to work the way it is on paper.
Yeah.
But from what I've watched on TV, it doesn't always work that way.
And did he have an experience with aliens or something?
I don't remember that. But
should we spread that rumor?
But a lot of people thought that was a conspiracy, that they landed
it didn't
on the
happen.
moon. And I was hosting a Conspiracy Zone TV show for a while, and we'd have different conspiracies on. Mm-hmm. And one of them was the man on the moon thing. And so I called him. Somehow I got his number. And I called him, and it was like a date. We went on a date. No, I called him, and I said, would you mind coming on the show? And he goes, you know what? I can't do that. I'm not even going to entertain the notion that this was a conspiracy and that we didn't really walk on the moon. I said, okay. And that was that.
And then you did the episode anyway and spread that rumor.
And we spread the rumor about aliens. And really, it was him walking on the beach in Puerto Vallarta. Yeah. It wasn't the moon.
Yep. You started QAnon, didn't you?
I started QAnon. Yeah. And the Proud Boys.
Yeah.
I started the Proud Boys when they weren't that proud. So they've come a long way.
They've grown.
That was COVID. That one was COVID.
It's pre-COVID.
Yeah.
You also did Humphrey Bogart and Lauren Bacall, so that's not Friends. So that's a hard rule, I guess.
But I did know Lauren Bacall. Mm-hmm. I did a movie with her called All I Want for Christmas, which they play every year, and it's a horrible movie. But she was...
How's her work?
Her work?
Yeah.
Oh, she's excellent. She was like the girl back there in the 40s.
Why is the movie bad, then?
The movie?
Yeah. What's wrong with it?
I don't really remember what it's about, but I played the bad guy. I played the creep who was trying to date the mother because they just broke up. But I was hanging out with Lauren Bacall in the lobby of the set, and the kids were running around. 2 kids were in it, Thora Birch and this other kid. And she was getting really infuriated with their wildness. And finally she said, will somebody keep these brats in order? Or something like that. And then we started talking, and she smoked a lot, so she had a real raspy cigarette voice. And I remember she was really old at the time, and she was 2 years that I am now, younger than I am now. But she told me stories about Humphrey Bogart, because she used to be married to Humphrey Bogart. And she said one time they got into a big argument in their house, and because I guess he didn't wash the dishes, and they started fighting, and he ran out and he slammed the door behind him, and he was gone for like 2 or 3 days. And after the first day, she got worried. He wasn't calling. Second day, not hearing from him. Third day, he finally calls and asks her to come and pick him up on PCH down by Long Beach. And she was so happy to hear from him. She went down there, and she drove down there, and in the distance, she could see him walking along the side of PCH, just a little figure with the sun coming up behind him. And as she got closer, she saw that he had a single rose in his hand for her. And I thought that was really kind of romantic. And I learned something. After an argument, go get a rose. Yeah. And also, he when he was near the end of his life, he had cancer, and he was very frail, very thin. And they lived in a house that had a dumbwaiter. Those things that you pull the dishes up with by a rope. The old houses had them. And so he's very frail up on the second floor. And when they had company come over, he wanted to come down. So they'd put him into the dumbwaiter, which is only like that big, and they would lower him down. And then he'd come out, they'd open up the bottom, and Lauren would say, and dinner has arrived.
That's the saddest thing I've ever heard in my entire life.
Let me finish.
A cancer-riddled Humphrey Bogart put into a tiny dumbwaiter, and then they laugh about it. Sounds like Lauren Bacall was a terrible person. I mean, let the guy not wash the dishes. He clearly is too ill.
Well, they didn't have dishwashers back then.
Yeah.
So somebody had to do them.
That's
I mean,
right.
Lauren's not going to do them.
She's not going to do it.
Yeah.
She hates children, she hates her husband, and is obsessed with dishes.
Loves cigarettes.
Loves the cigarettes.
Loves cigarettes.
Loves
So she's
her
in the book.
cigarettes.
He's in the book.
Yes.
Him walking down PCH is
Yes.
in the book.
You didn't do a picture of him in a dumbwaiter.
I didn't think about that. I would have done that. I thought about it.
Now, you also did a picture of Eddie Vedder, really good
Eddie Vedder.
Eddie Vedder.
Yeah, Eddie Vedder told me this. I used to work at the Improv in San Diego. They had an improv there, but this is back again in the 1900s, in the 80s. And Eddie Vedder told me that, this is before Pearl Jam, he used to surf down there a lot. He's a surfer. And then he would come and see me at the Improv. I was one of his favorite comics. He'd come and see me at the Improv every time I was down there. And then I found out later that his girlfriend worked as a server at the Improv.
You
Or
thought he
liked
was a big
girl
fan?
there, so he would always go there to hang out with her. And then he was doing Saturday Night Live once, and he came up to me and goes, Lauren's let me do 3 songs. Usually it's only 2 songs for the band. He's let me do 3. He said, and he had a new album out. He goes, what songs should I do off the album? And I didn't know any of the songs because I wasn't an alternative music guy.
You're a James
And,
Taylor guy.
Yeah, I was James Taylor.
The grunge was too hard for you.
Grunge just didn't. It
Too
was
edgy.
not. It was not really. It didn't really express talent or anything.
Yep.
But
You
so I
preferred
didn't know
a
any
country road.
Country Road. I didn't know any of the songs, and so I said, Eddie, you can't go wrong with any of the songs you pick. And I noticed when he played, he liked to spit. He would spit. And I
Yeah.
thought, that is so weird. And it wasn't that he had something in his mouth. It's just
Yeah.
that he got so into it. He'd go, you know.
Yeah. James Taylor doesn't do that.
No, it just doesn't. Just that.
Yeah. Your good friend James Taylor.
Yeah, he was a good friend, Judd.
James Taylor was in Funny People, and we needed him to sing one song in this sequence, but I just wanted to watch him sing.
Yeah.
So I said, why don't we just like do a whole bunch of songs and I'll decide in post what song. And I forced him to do 10 songs over 2 days and made him like a human jukebox. It was the best 2 days of my life. I don't regret abusing him and his band at all. But it was so fun to have access to him. Now we're going to do questions at this point.
Sure.
Right? Now,
If you have a question, raise your hand and I'll
Yeah.
bring a microphone to you. Just a quick reminder, questions around here typically begin with a W or an H, sometimes a D. They are generally short. There's no such thing as a 2-part question, and tonight only Judd gets to ask follow-up questions.
Okay, so they are very mad at you guys. They don't believe in your ability to ask questions. Clearly someone screwed up the question part. Like an audience member ruined it for everybody else, because now there's rules.
Hi.
Where are you? Oh, you're right
I'm
there.
here.
That started with an H. I like that.
Yeah. I understand you were from St. Louis, and I'm from St. Louis. And
I thought you looked familiar.
what got you out?
What got me out?
Yeah.
Well, my father went to St. Louis University, and he graduated, and I was newly born, and we were there for 3 weeks. I hated the place. I got in the car and I split. No, we moved to Connecticut because he got a job there, and he took me, thankfully. They both took me. They took me there. But I was just there last week, and people were asking about you. They were talking about you. You want to follow up?
Seems like you come from a nice family.
You would say that, yeah. A lot of comedians come from broken families, and mine were like, I was very lucky, perfect family. I was the troublemaker.
Yep.
No, I was just, that was my struggle, because I didn't come from a bad family, and I regret that. I think these comics that come from a bad family have it much easier.
You're not an angry comic.
No, I'm a happy comic. Nobody wants to see a happy comic.
Although I feel lately your act is bubbling under with rage. You're getting angrier, but in a subtle way.
Oh, a very subtle way.
I feel more rage than before.
There's a lot of rage, I'll tell you that.
There's
man.
new edge. There's new Nealon edge.
I feel like I've become a loner. I keep to myself a lot.
Yeah.
Serial killerish. I'm still thinking about the St. Louis question. It's so good.
All right. Who's next?
So I loved you on SNL, but I also loved you on Weeds. Which format did you feel more comfortable with?
Well, I feel lucky because I got to do a sitcom with Matt LeBlanc. I did Weeds, which was a single camera, and we shot really late into the night a lot of times. A lot of sitting around in the trailer. You know what that's like, Judd.
Yeah.
And I did Saturday Night Live, which was live. So I got to experience all of that in stand-up comedy and writing.
Hiking?
Hiking, my hiking show. And one of the things I liked the best was doing an episode of Curb because it was all improv. And it was so fun. And then when I went back to Weeds for a scripted show, it was just like, I want to do improv.
Did you try?
I tried to get rid of the script, but they wouldn't have it.
You took over for Dennis Miller over on Weekend Update there. And I was just wondering if Dennis gave you any sort of tips or advice for hosting Weekend Update.
No, he didn't. He really didn't. He was gone, and that was it. I never saw him. I saw him again after that, but he never. But of course, I would watch him do Weekend Update, so I learned a lot. And I was a big Chevy Chase fan when he did Weekend Update, so I modeled mine more after Chevy Chase, where I was like the real newscaster. I know everybody has a different take on Weekend Update. It seems like lately it's more people commenting on the story instead of just delivering the joke. And it's just a different style. I prefer more of the straight Weekend Update anchor. And we're back, Judd. And we're back.
And you have Norm Macdonald you drew in the book?
Norm Macdonald. Yeah, Norm was
You toured with Norm a bunch, right?
Yeah, I toured with him a lot.
What was
And
he like?
Norm
How would you
was
describe him?
Very needy.
Yeah.
Norm needed a handler.
Yeah.
He needed somebody. He was like James Taylor. He would lose his socks a lot. But he did. He would
And his
lose his
shirt.
passport. Yeah. He couldn't find his passport. We were in Canada once. He couldn't find his passport. He couldn't find. I took him golfing once to a golf lesson in Palm Springs for 2 days, and they videotape your swing. And every morning I had to wake him up. He couldn't find his shoes. He was like a little kid. And everybody said how brave his comedy was and daring. And I always thought, that's just poor judgment. He had poor judgment. That's all it was. It wasn't daring or brave or anything.
He didn't know not to say things.
No, but he would, we'd get the golf lessons, and they were professionals, videotaping. And then at the end, they show you what your swing is like and what you're doing wrong. And he would argue with the pro. He'd go, no, that's not right. Good Lord, And he loved to gamble. And I learned not to loan him money.
Yeah.
That's what I took away from all of this. Don't loan, because we were in Vegas once, and he asked for $500, and he gave it back to me the next morning. So I gave him $500, and he went to the casino. He played blackjack all night, and the next morning I said, Norm, you got the $500? He goes, yeah, you get it back. That's a bad impression, too.
And he's not that hard to do.
I know. I'm just
Try
not
it
good
again.
at
Let's
it.
see. Really try it. Just really go for it.
Yeah, you got that over there, huh? You got that. Good Lord. And I did that, But, so the next day, that went on for like 3 or 4 days. Norm, you got 500? Yeah, you'll get it back. Good Lord. Just the good Lord thing helps. And then the final, like that last day, I go, Norm, come on, it's so disrespectful. I need the money. Would you please? He goes, what are you complaining about? You only lost $500. I lost $5,000. That was Norm Macdonald.
I was at the show once just visiting, and I said, me and Norm had written jokes for Roseanne, like early in our career. She hired us to help her write jokes for her act. And I said, you want some help writing Weekend Update jokes? And I went in his office, and we took out newspapers. And then after 2 minutes, he started looking uncomfortable. And he just turned to me and he went, can I leave? Like, I'm here for you. I don't want to write jokes for you.
Yeah, I mean, when I was doing Weekend Update, nobody really wants to write for Weekend Update because it's not a glorifying job. Nobody on Monday is going to say, hey, you hear about that Clinton joke or whatever? It was so long ago. You hear about that Roosevelt joke? So it was hard to get people to write. And I was paying writers out here to fax me in jokes. This is before emails and things.
Yeah.
There was no computers.
Curly paper.
Yeah. And on Saturday mornings, Lorne Michaels, to try to entice writers to write Weekend Update jokes, he would put out a buffet. He would have people cater a buffet up on the 17th floor, the writer's room. And they would put newspapers all over this big table and AP photos, because there was no Google. And you get new writers coming up, and they weren't very good. And Al Franken would come out because he was a political guy, and Norm Macdonald would come up. But Norm would only come up to have breakfast and read a paper. And then he'd leave.
I'd give you nothing.
He gave me nothing.
Any more questions?
Yep. Sorry, I got one right
Oh,
here.
there's someone there. Someone's been pre-assigned.
I've only been standing for a little. So I've heard a lot of statements about the crunch time coming up on Saturday when, comedians really have to burn the midnight oil. Do you have, like, an experience that stands out where you really got some sketch in or something just right before you started filming, like at the last moment?
Oh, that would happen quite often. Although I'm not good staying up all night. That was a holdover from the original cast when they did Coke all night, and they had that, could stay up all night. I couldn't do it. I would get up. I'd get up in the afternoon. I would be up in the afternoon. I start writing in the afternoon, and I wrote alone a lot. And it's better to have somebody to write with, especially a writer. And so I wouldn't stay. But sometimes I would stay up late.
Yeah.
And Dana and I shared an office for a while, and they have big windows in the office. And in the winter, you would see the snow coming down, and the lights that shine up at 30 Rock, it lit up the snow. And it was just dark out there, and it'd be like 2 in the morning, and the big tall windows. And Dana and I would be in front of that window looking out, and we go, we had our chance, we blew it. It was so sad.
Yeah.
But a lot of times that did happen. You get it in, and you got to give it to the PAs, production assistants, to type in time for the table read.
Pre-computers. Well, they waited forever to get computers there. They were still typing way past when
People
there were
like
computers.
using the legal pad, the yellow legal pad. But yeah, that did happen a lot. Yeah. And then you'd be exhausted.
And didn't Chris Farley poop out the window once?
He did, yeah. Chris Farley, I wasn't there, but I wrote that piece. Chris Farley apparently, because Spade and those guys would egg him on, and he'd want to perform for them and do some shocking stuff. So he stuck his butt out the window on the 17th floor, and he wanted to land it on 52nd Street. And he didn't get quite far out enough, so it was on the windowsill.
Did you draw that, or?
I did. That was my first doodle. That was a doodle.
Yes.
So you mentioned hiking a few times. Where do you like to hike?
I like to hike, where I hike mostly is in the Palisades and in Malibu. But lately I've been hiking. I did a hike in Ireland a couple of months ago with Paul Reiser, because he happened to be there. And I was doing a charity event. And so I hiked with him in Ireland, and I hiked with a couple people in New York. Paul Rudd, I hiked with him. That'll be my first hike on the 27th. And let's see, I hiked with my wife in the Smoky Mountains. She's an actress on many, many shows, very funny. And where else did I hike? Oh, Kenya? No. Mount Everest?
Well, before we close, what is your favorite new joke you're doing? You're doing a lot of stand-up lately. What is your favorite new joke that you're doing right now?
God, there's so many. Well, one joke is, and then I'll tell you my real joke. I'm very comfortable in life. I've given away a lot of money to charity. And that's fine because, my wife comes from old crypto. But here's a joke I like doing. Some people aren't, they don't appreciate what they have. Like, I know this guy, he has sex twice a day, he reads 3 books a week, and he's always working out. And yet, here he is still complaining about being in prison. I don't really know that guy. Yeah. That's the other thing about stand-up.
Yeah.
Some people go, I wrote that joke, to the audience. I did that joke, and I never say it was a joke because supposedly it's real. It's happening real. It's not a joke. Mm-hmm. It's like a magician just didn't say, that trick I did, because it's not a trick. It's real. Take a break. We'll be right back.
That's what we're here for, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.